Thanks for downloading this episode of On the Record Online with Eric Schwartzman, the podcast about how technology is changing the world of communications. To subscribe to the podcast or share feedback, visit us online at ontherecordpodcast.com, on Twitter at ontherecord, or send email to ontherecordpodcast@gmail.com.
Tell us about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm Cyril Moutran, and I'm one of the co-founders of Feedly. And Feedly is a newsreader. We call Feedly is a tool to feed your mind. So it's a newsreader for people who are curious, and have a lot of sources on the web, and they want to find the best way to keep up with these sources across all their devices. It can be on their laptop, desktop. We have a version for Android and iOS, tablet, and phone.
And tell us a little bit about your background. Where'd you get started? And tell us the road that led you to Feedly.
Oh, yeah. So my background is I'm an electrical engineer, and I came to Silicon Valley after my schools. I was born in France. And I came to Silicon Valley to work on Netscape at the very beginning of the web and this kind of big explosion of the internet. I met at Netscape, I met Edwin Kolabachian, who's the CEO of Feedly. So we've been long-time friends, and we both had kind of our own way. He started a couple companies, sold the last one to Oracle. I started a few companies as well in the last 10, 15 years. And then we kind of met back at Feedly where, he started Feedly in 2008, and I was advisor there, and I just love the product so much that I decided to kind of invest all my time in it.
And you guys are at the center of, a firestorm because of Google's recent announcement that they're going to be taking Google Reader offline. June 1st?
Yes. Yeah. So Google kind of gave a short time frame for this for the retirement of the Google Reader product. I wouldn't call it a firestorm. It's kind of a firestorm. It's also like a wave. It's kind of a tidal wave for us. And I think we've been working at serving the users that are very similar to Google Reader users for 4 or 5 years. Trying to basically provide the best productive reading experience. And so we've seen a lot of the Google Reader as early adopters to Feedly. But the last 2 weeks, it's been a huge income of users trying to find the best solution once Google Reader goes offline. So
I imagine you guys aim to be the best alternative.
Yeah, I think we are. We'd like to say so too, but I think the users are voting by just selecting us as the alternative. We are a very natural alternative to Google Reader. We've been kind of in the past being the home of a lot of the Google Reader users, early adopters. I've used Feedly to go beyond just the web version. They use our tablet version, they use our iOS or our phone versions. Users can just connect, to Feedly using their Google credentials. And today we have this backend solution that will enable users who log into Feedly today to seamlessly move all their Google Reader subscriptions, their tags, all the categorization they've done for all these years to the Feedly environment.
Now, I did that. I moved over everything from my Google Reader account, and most everything came over. But, obviously, it's a different product, so it's got different features. And I heard some rumors that you guys were considering mirroring the features that are available in Google Reader by the June 1st date. Is there any fact to that?
Yeah, I think it's in a lot of ways, I think you'll find all the features that you have in Google Reader in one way or form, in Feedly. And there's also like a different, so we do some features, there's a bit more features probably available in the web version today. Some of them are not completely available in the mobile version, and maybe because they don't make completely sense. They're not like we're trying to really optimize for each device the experience. And in terms of replicating, it's really more, there's really two parts of what we're doing right now. There's the Feedly as a reader, like as an app or a service that you can use to read your feed, remember which one you have read, which one you haven't read, which one you have starred, which, things you have mapped for later. And there's also like Feedly as a service, as a kind of platform, the way Google Reader was, So, and the app we have today is built on top of these APIs. And that's really where we were trying to aim to really replicate what the Google Reader was providing in terms of API, not so much just for the end user, but for also other developers that have been relying on the fairly complex infrastructure that was Google Reader in terms of, when you think about our backend services in Feedly, we index and scan and crawl almost, more than 50 million feeds. All that, is a fairly heavyweight, infrastructure, and we've been working at exposing this API not just for our new Feedly client, but also for other people who have been using the Google API.
So I see how Feedly is on par with Google Reader as a consumption tool, as a way of reading feeds. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to sort of dig into the nitty-gritty of the platform here with you. Let's start with the question of actually subscribing. So one of the interesting features that Google Reader had was the ability to import raw feeds. And I've noticed that it is possible in Feedly, just by opening the search field, to actually put an RSS feed in there, and rather than searching for articles or sites, you can actually just copy and paste an RSS feed in the search field, and it will read the feed. But one thing was peculiar to me. I noticed it takes some of the stories and it puts them on the top. It says they're featured, and then it puts the other ones beneath them. And when you're building a feed in, say, Google News search, you have some options in terms of chronology. You can do, the latest, the last week, the last 24 hours, and you could get that reverse chronological order in Google Reader. But I noticed that, there's something like they don't wind up in the same exact reverse chronological order in Feedly. Am I doing something wrong, or is that just the way it is?
No, it's a good question. So, and we have actually done quite a lot of little adjustments, update to our UI, based on this exact, type of feedback. In Feedly, we have different views for your feed, and right. Actually, if you have the latest of the update of the web version. There's always like a little wheel. There was always a little wheel where you can choose which type of layout you want for your feed. Right. We have a layout that has featured and also the rest of the stories. But we also have a layout that has a very, very, like detail. Like let's say you just want the headline in chronological order, you can use the first title only view, and it will have that. So, and the reason why we want to provide that flexibility is that there are a lot of different fine-grained use cases on how people need to keep up, with information. So let's say you're like a graphic designer, and there's part of what you do is keep up with news, and like you want like headline kind of scanning very fast. But also part of what you're doing is getting inspired, keep kind of your inspiration board going, or maybe getting inspired for a specific project you're working on. And there you want something more visual. And you want also to very quickly surface, content that is the most important of the day. And that's why we kind of have this flexibility to try. We try our best to try to figure out what the best default layout it is for you. And there's also settings you can use to say, for me, I'm mostly headline scanner, and I would like the headline views, the title only views to be the default view. Or you can also set. So we have that in this preference. But I would recommend you can always adjust, depending on the feed that you're trying to import into Feedly, you can go back and adjust it yourself.
Now, I see that pretty much all my feeds came through from Google Reader, except some of my search query fields. So, like, if I go to Google News and I search a term, and I go to the bottom of the page and I convert it to RSS, and then I copy that RSS feed and paste it in into the search field, it's not reading it. Should it be?
It should be. I do have some of this feed actually for me as well, because that's the way I keep track of who writes on Feedly, so it should be. So definitely send me, we can follow up on an email, and we'll figure out maybe what may be working on, exact case.
So there may be some specific user issues that I'm having, but in terms of the intention and the aim is to allow the user to cut and paste an RSS feed in here, and if it's a valid feed, it would pull the content into Feedly.
That's right. There's actually different ways. We also have something on the web in the browser extension.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why we're a browser extension is there's like something we call Feedly Mini. And it's like a little button that appears at the bottom right when you visit a site. And if there is a feed in the page, you can use that as well. Instead of copying the URL, you can use it to add the page or the site or the feed to Feedly.
Got it. Okay. Now, another thing that was cool about Reader was the ability to search within feeds or within directories.
Yes.
So let's say, for example, I'm subscribing to, a broad keyword, and, I'm not actually reading it all, but every now and then I like to go back and maybe search it by a geography or some other keyword to sort that feed. Is there a way to do that in Feedly?
So until recently, it means until last week, we had that feature. We had to turn it off temporarily, and it's part of what we're doing right now to make sure everybody has a smooth experience. We are in the process of redesigning that feature to make it more scalable. So it's something that will be off the product for a little bit, and will come back, hopefully, before the summer.
And what just sort of give us from a technical standpoint what it requires to do? I mean, is it server clusters that need to be secured to power that search?
Yeah, so it's an interesting topic. But think of it's basically a problem that you have when we're thinking about a reader like Feedly. Feedly, we're not talking about casual reading, right? We're not like Flipboard or Pulse. Like a lot of these casual readers, they can be a content with a small number of source for content. But when you're thinking about really providing a productive environment, where maybe professional users will be able to catch up with what's happening in their very specific industry, you need the long tail. You need the long tail of the web. Like you may be a security expert, and you need to know, if there's a vulnerability on CentOS. Right? And there's going to be that little site, that feed out there on the internet that is very specific to what you need. And that feed needs to be accessible through Feedly. And at some point, if I want to be able to search it, that feed needs to be indexed, and I need to be able to run a query against past reference or past post of that feed. So the backend is a fairly complex backend. It's kind of a mini Google scale problem, if you want. It's like you need to be able to scale, to crawl and index, up to 100 million of feeds, as we scale up in terms of user base. And you need to be able to feed that into an index that is very performant to be able to process, your specific search. So that's part of, we've part of what we call the Normandy, which is our next generation of Feedly platform services. We are rebuilding also that part, which is the search, and that's what will be involved. If you think of the amount of data that we are talking about is terabytes and terabytes of data that needs to feed into the search.
You think about even a company like Facebook, with their anemic search, or Twitter search, which just is terrible, And I'm not an engineer, but I remember reading an article about the back end of Google in the New York Times Magazine. It was a long article about what goes on every time you search Google, the amount of hardware required to make that happen quickly. is huge. And so you wonder, for a small company like Feedly, is that a potentially debilitating function to be able to sustain and to be able to, bring back and maintain? And obviously, if it's not casual reading, and it's obviously not, and it's great to hear you say that, it's about gathering together, a lot of data, a lot of news and information around a certain subject, and then being able to put your finger on whatever within that haystack you're looking for at a moment's notice. Search is critical.
So search. I think search is important for sure. Also, like making sure that when something new is happening, right? Like it's like the big advantage of the feed is that you don't have to go to all these websites that you have collected, and you're notified when something new is there. So I think in terms of building blocks, the crawling and the ability to remember which item you've seen or not seen, and be able to notify you when there's new things. That's very much the most important one. And then the ability to search is very important to users, both in the direction of being able to find new source of information that you might not know about yet, but things that keep changing and you need to keep up with what might be interesting to you, and then searching the content, which I think you can do today. To be fair, like you can still search on Google, but the ability to kind of filter down that search to the subset of things that you're following on Feedly.
Let's talk for a minute about the issue of latency, because it's always one that comes up when you think about any sort of monitoring service. One of the things that was nice about Google is, at least the belief was, I don't know if it's actually true, but the belief was that as soon as the spiders indexed a page for search, it would also be available in Reader, so sort of as instant as Google. How do you deal with the issue of being able to, bring the story through and serve it up to the user as soon as it's indexed by Google?
Mm-hmm. Well, we basically, with the new set of services we are deploying right now, we do our own crawling and indexing. So it's like we don't crawl. It's not like crawling the web. It's really crawling all the feeds that we are responsible for. And in that effort, there's quite a few things that are happening. It's like in the technical details. You have things like PubSub that helps you, with the providers that implement that push more like system, you can be very, very fast to know when something is happening. And then you have like typical crawling, issues in terms of, our crawlers need to be very smart in terms of understanding the frequencies these feeds are updated so that, we can be very efficient at going and finding information. So, there's a lot of little technical magic that's happening in that side.
Now let's turn the conversation to data and data analysis, because everyone's talking now about big data and how to get meaningful information from data. And one of the cool things in Google Reader was that little trends option. And so you could be bringing in 300 different feeds, and then you could look back after 60 days and see which ones actually were delivering the most stories. Of the ones that were delivering the most stories, which ones did you actually read most? There was also, the starred feature. I know you have something similar here. Is there any sort of back-end analytics view that the user can get of how they're consuming their feeds?
Not today, but we do have the data. And it's the data that we are starting to use, and aggregate to help, for instance, make our search engine better. How do you make it easier to discover new feeds? How do you figure out a little bit like kind of automating the blog roles, in terms of how do you know these two feeds are related to another feed that you may be subscribing to? So it's a great point. We haven't got too many requests yet of users wanting to see that data for themselves, but we have requests that are more indirect in terms of we have a lot of users that are kind of who have been looking traditionally at how do they prune or kind of reorganize things over time. Like a lot of users start adding a lot of feeds, and they're starting to be a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of information. And so if you look at, for instance, the features that we have on the web version with the organized, if you go to the left on the very top, we have an organized panel. And that has been a very much user-driven in terms of trying to really help people get organized over time, as we recognize that it's a dynamic problem. You start, you have no feed. You need to get efficient ways to get the right feeds into the system. But as you grow, you might end up having too many feeds, and you need an efficient way to organize the new feeds that are coming in and which one are you not using in the long term. So I think part of where we want to go with that is, instead of just providing you analytics, I think we want to provide you better tools for organization. So, for instance, like maybe a good example of feature that we've been thinking about is kind of automate a new feed tab, where it's kind of an inbox for new feeds. So it helps you bring in new feeds into the system and have sometimes about judging whether or not they're efficient for you or not. Right? And so that will help also prune back. Like sometimes we see users hesitate adding too much feed to Feedly because they have an environment that works really well for them, and they're afraid to make it too noisy. If that makes sense. So it's like, I think it's the analytics, I think, will come, because I think they're great features, but we also want to make sure they're actionable to you. It can be helpful for users to say, okay, this feed you always read, like every other day. Maybe you should make it mark as a must-read feed, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, for broad purposes, that sounds like a real smart way to go. I think a lot of people in, my profession who are marketing consultants and do strategic consulting for organizations, often if a company didn't have a premium solution for monitoring, one of the things I know I did, and I bet a lot of other people would do, is we would set up these Google Reader accounts where we'd basically monitor, a bunch of different phrases. And we'd monitor those phrases, sometimes as many as 500-600 of them in different channels for a period of 30, 60, 90 days, and then get a feel for where the hot pockets of conversation are in the client's business. And then we could say to them, hey, these are the things related to your business that most people are talking about online, and so as you allocate resources and look into allocating staff to either generate content or participate in conversations, these are the topics that you should be paying the most attention to, because these are really what people are talking about already. And that's pretty insightful to be able to do that. Obviously, with the premium tools, you can do it a lot easier in a shorter period of time, less manual work. But if you really are looking to, compare apples to apples and look for an alternative, that trends, that analytics is so important, because otherwise you can't really see where the action is in a short period of time.
That makes complete sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that's a great use case. I love this kind of conversation, because like we do a lot of user testing at Feedly, and each time we discover this new fine-grained use case, it's a great opportunity for us to kind of rebound and try to figure out, okay, how can we better the product? Is that like maybe an API where somebody else can provide that dashboard, or should we build that into the Feedly.com, the Feedly main interaction? Yeah, I completely understand your use case.
I did see one workaround. Tell me what you think about this. Could you use the tagging feature?
Definitely, you could do that. Yeah, so you basically can organize, with tags, which are kind of folder. It will tell you how much activity are in each of these buckets. But I can see the value of also having kind of pure analytics in terms of how many posts per week, per day, are there.
Yeah, if I look into Reader, they have, starred, most read, most clicked. Now, you do have something started. You have bookmarks. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So so the bookmark and the star is really is very similar functions. So it's a way for you. It's a very light way for you to be able to take something like an article that you've seen on Feedly and remember it for later. Or save it for, because you're going to work on an article, maybe that's going to be useful for you. We also have in Feedly, the way we approach this is we provide this very lightweight functionality, very similar to Google Reader, but we also have nice integration with partners like Pocket. And there's also, like in Feedly, if you go to the preferences, we also try to really be mindful about, okay, what's your preferred tool for doing this kind of use case? So when it comes to sharing or when it comes to saving, things that you discovered on Feedly, if you use Pocket because, you use Pocket for what you read, but also all the things that you discover online, then we want to make it really easy for you for that button and that easy access to the Pocket. If you are satisfied with what we have in Feedly, then, we want to make it very easy for you to use it as well. And I think we also support Instapaper and some others that do the same.
Let's talk for a minute about these different tools that allow you to visualize your social media, your personal social media feeds alongside the news that you're bringing in, right? Because you can actually see your Facebook and your Twitter on the same screen, right?
Yes. Yes. Even though, really the focus we have is more driven towards the actual source of content rather than the one which is like the repeating source of content. I would say, 80-90% of things you find on Twitter have an origin that is outside Twitter. Right? So it's on Twitter you follow more people than content directly. Even though you have Twitter account that have that are kind of repeats of an RSS feed, for instance. And so we really think what we see a lot of needs for be able to really nicely organize feeds and content that you want to follow directly in Feedly. And then if there is one or two or some other feeds that you want to follow, then you can also search and you can find the Twitter feed and the Facebook feed and subscribe to it as well.
If I go and I click on Today, which is the main page, I've got maybe a couple hundred feeds coming in here. What am I going to see under Featured? What are you serving up there? Those three top stories.
Yeah. So there, what we try to do is we try to help you discover great content within all your feeds. So we look at quite a few things to try to help you pass through all the content. We look at engagement on these feeds, in terms of how many in this feed, which posts are getting most clicks, which posts are getting more comments, which posts are getting more shares on the social networks, and we'll try to basically bring you some of the best content without you having to scan through all the posts necessarily. And then if you want to dive down into a very specific feed, you can always do it either through the whole section or one of the specific sections. So the Today is really kind of a space for discovery. And if you log in during the weekend, we also do like a kind of a weekend edition that helps you kind of, if you miss things during the week, it's also a quick way to kind of find the things maybe you have missed during the week.
Got it. So this, I guess, is the equivalent of the Discovery tab on Twitter.
Yeah, actually, that's yes. And let you know.
And seeing as how you are giving us the ability to bring Facebook and Twitter into the service, I mean, do you think are you looking at like oh God, what are they called? Flipbook? What are those other guys called? Help me out here. I don't find a Flipboard. You look at like Flipboard, and they're sort of, they're not giving you reverse chronological order as an option. They just use social information to try to curate all the different feeds. I mean, do you see a point at where, the featured section becomes its own section? And the tool goes more in that direction?
No, not really. I think I think we see a clear difference between the more casual usage of content and content subscription and the more productive usage of content. So in a sense, for instance, in my feed, I have things that are marked as must read, and I do want to see all the posts in chronological order, and I will always want to. For instance, any mention of Feedly in the press. That's something I want to know. There are, specific things, that we do with our critical, key partners to know if something is happening with some of our key partners. And I keep tab on this really frequently, maybe a couple of times a day. And these are feeds, I want just to see all the posts. They're not very high volume, but I want to see all the posts. Then in my other interests, I keep a tab on other things that are happening, in, for instance, the world of new device and new ways people may be interacting with. So I subscribe to posts around a lot of different posts like Arduino and a lot of the makers posts. And I don't necessarily have time to read through all these posts every day, but I'm very open to trying to see, okay, what is really happening in that particular industry or things. And that's where the Today feature becomes really interesting to me, because I may not have the time every day to go through the 200 or 300 posts of that section, but give me the 2 or 3 things that really resonate. It gives me a good sense of where that industry is going. And then the day where I have more time, I can go directly in that section and I go see all the posts if I want to.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, for discovery, there are so many different tools out there that are trying to use social algorithms to tell you what's most important. And Google Reader was like the one tool you could count on to give it to you in reverse chronological order, everything, and you could really decide on your own. Yes.
And that's
so valuable.
That's coming back to our earlier discussion. If you think about that, all of these different options will let you tweak Feedly for you. For instance, when you go to a specific tag or category, you can still have the free features on top, but the rest can be chronological order below. Or you can say, this really, I just want everything. Very simple, like in Google Reader, just the headlines, all in time, let me scan things. And I think we don't intend we see this as very core features, and we don't intend to just move to something that will be just, kind of our own magical algorithm. Well, we don't believe in that. We believe that there's just a wide variety of use case, and we need to be able to let you, on the things where you really need to see everything in chronological order, let you do that. On the things where maybe you could benefit from, like an example would be maybe I just want to be inspired in a specific field. Then maybe the feature plus the chronological order may be the right display for you.
When I look at a directory of feeds inside of the titles view option, it'll say the name of the feed, and then there'll be a little number in green, and then the headline. What's the number?
Yeah, so this number is an aggregate of the number of social interaction on the feed. So it helps you get a sense of the engagement in that specific article or post. Very nice.
Now let's talk just big picture about the subject of interoperability. So early on, Facebook made it real easy to pull feeds out of Facebook as RSS. They shut it down. Twitter used to have Twitter search via RSS real easy. They shut it down. You can still hack a feed without being a computer programmer. By the way, if you're listening and you want to do it, just search hack Twitter feed, and you'll come to a bunch of blog posts that'll explain to you how to basically translate different Twitter searches or Facebook pages into RSS feeds. But obviously, as these social networks look to retain their visitors so they can serve more ads, the social web becomes less open and more proprietary. And so, I wonder, what is the future of RSS from a technical standpoint, I'd be curious to know. I can hack a feed on Twitter, even though they shut down the native feature where you can just click on the RSS button and convert it. There's still a bunch of blog posts out there that tell you how to hack a feed for a Twitter search or Twitter search by geography, all sorts of different ways of searching. And you can also hack a feed for a Facebook page as long as you know how to get the ID for the page. It's pretty easy, and you have a notepad or a Word, text editor. It's very easy to do. If Google were to remove RSS from Google News Search, would that be something that somebody would still be able to hack, or could they actually shut it down once and for all?
Well, I mean, so there's always a path where, they could shut it down. You could think the big company may be able to shut down, their access to RSS if they don't want to. I don't think it's in their interest, but that's, there is a trend today, which is, some services are kind of asking themselves, should I have RSS, and is that still useful and still driving users or not? And I think there's also a trend that is a little bit different, which is, I think the larger players today have a tendency of trying to build walls. It's just a natural tendency when you're a large player. And you see that with Apple, you see that with Google, you see that with Facebook, and maybe Twitter a little bit. My first, comment would be that, the most interesting content that lives on Twitter, on Facebook, on Pinterest, on this great social network, the most interesting content doesn't live there. It doesn't come there. It was not born there either. Like somebody that probably was using a feed reader or some other tool basically found that great content and put it on Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest. And so
the content is a discussion.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah, so I think after that, I think Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest is a great way of spreading the content, from people to people. It's kind of it just accelerates the way when you have a great content to get it discovered by more people. Right? But there's still this problem of initial discovery. So that's just the first, way to say, most people still see, like online publishers, they still see feed traffic to be their number 5 source of traffic usually. And that's just counting directly traffic of people who are reading the content through this open feeds, RSS, Atom. And then there's also a lot of the people who are reading this content, they are the influencers. They are the people who are curious enough to go out of their way to find the content and then bring it to the social network. So they are kind of the trigger, the source, the little bees that are going around and finding the content and sparking the conversation on Twitter and Facebook and so on. So in that respect, I think there's still very much a need for open feeds and RSS. Content doesn't live in the centralized hub today, and I think it's also not desirable, and most people don't, I don't think it's the vision that either desirable for the internet, and most publishers want to be able to still publish their content pretty freely out there. So I hope it answers your question. I think maybe I got a little bit sidetracked there, but...
No, I mean, I think a lot of people now are sort of asking themselves, do I move on from RSS? Is RSS still the way that I should be looking at analyzing conversations around an industry or around, my business or my brand or my organization or my association? Somehow you've got to be able to do it. And, there are terrific tools out there like, Radian 6 for those companies that can afford it. But, you think about people that are at nonprofits or, the fire department where the money goes to buy pickaxes and pay for new fire engines. They're going to need some sort of tool to monitor. And it's not necessarily going to be just about, covering news that's interesting to them. It's also going to be about just making sure that they're monitoring what's being said in their neck of the woods about whatever subjects of interest to them, and it seems like there's a huge hole in the market with with Reader going away to do that, and I guess one of the ways that you can fill that hole is with your product, But now that I've sort of spoke to you about this use case, it doesn't seem like that's a big consideration for you guys. Is that right, or?
No, I think that's
disagree?
not. I would disagree. I think the use case of being able to keep up, current with a very specific industry or domain is definitely something that is core to what people do today. In terms of the ability to get, more like an analytical dashboard, I think that's definitely something it's not something that has been very high on our radar, but I would also expect our radar to change. We have our user voice forum that we created just, kind of to really direct all the feedback we're getting from all the new Google Reader users, has tons of ideas, that we've been starting to work on. So I would expect it, as, we're welcoming more and more Google Reader users, if this use case are very important, they will show up. And we will prioritize.
And if you're listening and you'd like to post to the forum, we'll have a link in the show notes. Let's close it up with just a little discussion about, Feedly and Feedly's business. Tell us, what is your revenue model? What's your business model?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've been really focused on organically growing, for the last 4 or 5 years, and we have not really focused too much yet on the monetization aspect of the business. But this is definitely something that was a priority for us, for this year, and is becoming more and more of a priority as our growth has accelerated quite drastically. So we see a few opportunities. We first, have been having for a while, a lot of our users who depend on the product asking us, where is the pay button? Some users just come to us and they just say, I want to pay for Feedly, I pay for Evernote, I pay for the books, Dropbox, I rely and depend on your product, and I'm willing to pay. And it's kind of the interesting thing is for these users that are kind of more professionally oriented, it's really more a question of making sure we are there, when they need it. They use us all the time, and they want to make sure we are there. And I think there's also another set of things that we've been told, by these more professional users, is they would like to get, deeper integration with other tools they use and pay for, like Evernote and Dropbox. So one way we are looking, to bring some revenue is to introduce a Feedly full version. And so this will be, they said, we'll always have a free version of Feedly as we have today, but the idea would be to offer a subscription-based model for users who want more advanced features. And
now, have you guys raised money?
The way we are financed is we have our own angel funding, and that's how we've been financed so far. So we're still a very small company. We are 11 people now. A lot of engineers. That's really where the horsepower is right now. And we will look at opportunities to, as we're looking forward, if we have more demand, we might try to raise more funding.
Might we know any of your angels?
Well, one of them. No, that's like we're pretty much self-financed. We're a team of very experienced entrepreneurs. Pretty much everybody at Feedly has done startups in the past, multiple startups. And Feedly is really a project that we've been working on. Where we thought, this is a project that is really worthwhile, that is, that we really believe in, and we wanted to basically be able to grow it, as at the pace it needed, and we grew to about 4 million active users, but really active users in a space of 4 or 5 years, between 2008 and 2 weeks before now. And the last week has kind of changed a bit the way we look at things, of course, because, in the last 2 weeks, we signed up more than 3 million new users. So this opportunity that kind of Google opened in front of us, I think kind of both confirmed where we thought, the market was, but now it kind of puts some more pressure on us to be able to scale the product and scale the infrastructure and scale the company.
Great. Is there anything else you'd like to share that I didn't ask you?
Well, I think in more general terms, I think there is, we have this vision and belief that it's very important for the web to stay open. It's important for Feedly because, as Feedly being kind of this productive environment, it's very critical that you find, the news information, the sources that you need for whatever you're trying to do. But so we have a vested interest on making sure, RSS and open feed in general, anyways, publishers out there can publish content in a very open way and be consumed by multiple readers like Feedly. I think that way is better for everybody. And beyond Feedly itself, I think it's there's very big challenges, out there. There's really two different visions that you can paint of the world of tomorrow. If you look at the last couple of years, things have tended to be closed down a little bit more. If you think about application being silos of information and application need to be approved to get onto the app stores, then you're in a world where, if your content is maybe politically controversial or, there's so many examples out there where maybe you cannot be on the app store, so you cannot have an audience. And so I think the alternative way, which is and has been the internet traditionally, where you can just set up a server and you can publish your content and you can basically say, well, as long as you can subscribe to this feed, then, you can basically listen to what I have to say. I think it's the world we want for tomorrow.
Well, I appreciate you spending so much time with us today. It really will matter to a lot of people who listen to this podcast because I know, you are talking to the, hardcore Google Reader users on this podcast. So if I left any questions out, guys, I'm sorry. Go ahead and ask them in the comments string on the blog, and I'll send a link out to Cyril, and hopefully he'll monitor it, and I'll alert you if there's anything in there worth answering that I missed. But I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to On the Record Online with Eric Schwartzman, the podcast about how technology is changing the world of communications. To subscribe to the podcast or share feedback, visit us online at ontherecordpodcast.com, on Twitter at ontherecord, or send email to ontherecordpodcast@gmail.com. On the Record Online is hosted by Eric Schwartzman, an independent online communications consultant whose clients include the U.S. Department of State, the United States Marine Corps, the U.S. Embassy of Greece, the Government of Singapore, Johnson & Johnson, Toyota, Southern California Edison, the Environmental Defense Fund, and dozens of small to medium-sized organizations. For information about engaging Eric Schwartzman as a speaker, social media trainer, or digital strategist, visit www.ericschwartzman.com or send email to eric@ericschwartzman.com.